Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Chakra Way Meditation Podcast. And today's guest, I'm really excited for this guest. I have Dr. Tom Igegno, who is a doctor of Chinese Herbal Medicine and a doctor of Acupuncture. I don't know if I've said that right. I've probably got
That's
the
close
yeah.
enough. We got 30 different titles for the
Yeah.
same degree, so don't worry about it.
And then the other thing that Dr. Tom does is cupping, which is I was fascinated to see watching the Olympics this year that there were several swimmers covered in those very distinctive cupping marks. So we're going to get into all of this. I'm super interested in acupuncture because I feel like it taps into, well, it does tap into very directly into the meridians, into our energy channels. And in Chinese medicine, these energy channels, the meridians, are very recognized. And I know that, on the NHS here in the UK, it's a very standard recognized medical treatment. Um, Whereas the chakra system uses the same pathways, but is not so medical and scientific. So we're going to get into all of this, and welcome, Tom. Thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's cool. So what did you make of all these Olympians with their
Uh, you
yeah.
know, it's so funny because in true, if it doesn't happen in America, Americans don't give a shit about it. So,
Mm.
sorry.
That's true.
When I was watching the Olympics in I guess it was 2012, the Summer Olympics.
The London
I
Olympics.
noticed behind Michael Phelps, who is like, I'm in Baltimore, Maryland. He's originally from here. Everybody gets excited about him.
Yeah.
I noticed all the Asian swimmers running around on the pool deck with cupping marks on. And me and my colleagues were like, wow, I bet you in 4 years, every swimmer will have it on them. Every gymnast will have the marks on them. And sure enough, the day after Michael Phelps won his first medal, our local news crew was in my office filming a piece on it because he had cupping marks all over his chest and back. And then, 4 years later, now everybody's doing it and it's all over the place. And somebody even remarked it looked like they saw more cupping marks than kinesio tape, which was such a hot thing, right? The tape on
Yes, the
everybody.
tape that they, yeah.
And it's so funny because there are some similarities in how those things act, which is like increasing space for that fascia to kind of slide around below the surface of the skin. And I'm breaking it down into kind of like its basic parts there, but that's one thing that both cupping and the kinesiology tape do is it pulls just a little bit of tension on the skin to allow for more slide below.
Oh,
Um, so for me it was kind of like, yeah, you're about several thousand years late, but at least we're getting there, right? At
literally.
least we're learning something. We're not the brightest ones in the drawer, but we're getting there.
We're getting there. We're getting there. That's so interesting. So, I mean, I'm going to get back into sort of your history and so on in a bit, but I
Yeah,
want
sure,
to
whatever.
understand. I want to understand, because obviously cupping is one thing, acupuncture is a different
Yeah.
thing. You and Chinese medicine is a whole new thing, a whole massive
Hmm.
thing. So let's just take them one at a time. And since we started talking about cupping,
Yeah.
explain to people what it is and how it is a benefit, not just to
Yeah.
Olympians, but to us
Yeah. Yeah.
mentors.
And honestly, it was never meant for like just high level athletes or anything like that.
Mm,
So cupping as a formalized system, we're not exactly sure when it started. The oldest text that we have on record now, and this is only probably because it's the only thing that survived that long,
mm,
comes from the Ebers Papyrus, which is 1515 BC in ancient Egypt.
wow.
However, if they wrote it down, they must have been practicing it earlier. And by that time, Greece, the Middle East, Egypt, all these places we're already talking. So we know Persian physicians were using it. We know that Hippocrates wrote a ton about it a little bit later. And we know that it traveled throughout the whole world via the Silk Trade Route before it was called the Silk Trade Route.
Oh, wow.
So, we have this place, Bactria, which I believe is in northern Afghanistan, which is where people from Europe went, east, and where people from Asia went west.
Mhm.
And it goes back so far that we don't even know why there are redheaded people with kilts buried in the Middle East. Yeah, it's a very weird thing, but these are things that are lost to time. And
Yeah.
one of the reasons I really like cupping is because of this great spreading, it's
Mm,
not appropriating to pick it up and learn it, right? It's not like you're taking it from one culture. We all used it.
yeah.
And even to the fact that somehow in South America, thousands of years ago, they were doing cupping too. And well, we don't think we made it that way, right? And I'm saying that in a very Eurocentric way, and I apologize for that, but we don't think that side of the world was talking to the other side of the world.
Yeah.
Yet, was
Yeah.
it a coevolution of this idea? Was there some trade and communication that we just don't know about? Was this older than we thought it was and it came across a
Mm.
land bridge? I don't know.
Wow.
Um,
Big
but
questions.
but cupping is basically the use of creating a suction and adhering that to the skin to pull the skin away from the fascia away from the muscle, and create more circulation, pull more blood into that area, right? And that's how it relieves pain. That how it helps promote healing, digestive disorders, the whole process. It's very funny, even when we talk about getting increased circulation. That's a symptom or a sign. I shouldn't call it a symptom. It's a very good thing of rest and digest mode. Your autonomic
Yeah.
nervous system's parasympathetic nervous, calm, relaxed.
Yeah.
So the cool thing about that is you put the cup on, you increase circulation. Your body doesn't know if you're naturally calm because you're just calm, or if it was stimulated to be calm, but because you've increased that circulation systemically, all the other calm, rest, and digest functions start kicking in.
Yeah. Yeah. That's extraordinary. So in your practice in Baltimore, like what
Mhm.
are the common things that people come to you for
You,
for
for cupping, number one is musculoskeletal stuff. They see it at the gyms, right? You know, everyone's walking around in a tank top and they've got the marks on, and you can't swing a dead cat and not hit. Wow, I'm saying all these weird phrases, uh, um, and
Right.
not hit a small boutique gym or a major gym in the area that my office is.
Yeah.
And cupping is kind of this great modality for people that have overdone it at the gym. And then on top of it, it's great advertising for me because there's a visible mark, right? That's a
Yeah,
hickey at the
exactly.
surface of the skin, right? Those are small capillaries that have been broken by that negative pressure.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a really effective pain relief, and it's basically just promoting great circulation and
Absolutely.
fascial kind of mobility.
Yeah, and on top of that, it goes 6 inches into the body. So classically, they would use it. Yeah, I mean, if you look at somebody from the side, that could be almost all the way through some people, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So classically, we can use it for chest congestion, like respiratory issues, you know, bronchitis, pneumonia, those kind of things. And I'm not saying it's going to cure that, but the
yeah,
idea is it's getting more circulation to the lungs, hopefully to break up some of that mucus. We know that if we do it on the lower back or on the abdomen, we can have an effect on the intestines.
yeah. I mean,
So
it's
even,
affecting the
yeah,
kidneys, the
yeah,
liver, everything. So all it's doing is literally just drawing the blood into that
yeah.
space, which is something that's so powerfully, it's such a big healing thing to do. That's part of one of the big things in yoga is the movements that you do that increase
Mhm.
and encourage the blood circulation to flow, to joints and actually, out of interest, can you affect joint health through cupping?
So joint health is a little trickier. You're not going to cup directly over a bendy part. It just
Right.
doesn't it
Yeah.
doesn't fit so well. We do have silicone cups that are a little bit better at joints
Yeah.
because they can conform to the skin. But if you cup the muscle groups that are above and below it, you can get a lot of circulation through that
Yeah.
area. So you may not do it directly over that. Even in massage, they won't necessarily massage the back of the knee crease, so we
No.
would go above and below that, not directly on it.
Yeah.
That being said, there will be an acupuncturist or somebody listening that goes, "No, I do that all the time." Yes, there are special conditions which a
Yeah.
practitioner may do that, but for home use and things like that, you wouldn't go over joints as often.
And so cupping, that seems very nice. That kind of fits nicely into a slot of what it can do for a
Yeah,
for a body and for a person. Acupuncture, on the other hand, is
yeah.
a whole nother ball game. And I it's a weird thing because I have always said, "Oh, I would love to have an acupuncture session." I've got a friend who lives 20 minutes down the road who is an acupuncturist.
Hmm.
but yet I've never actually managed to get around to doing it. Um, because it seems like it can do so
Yeah.
much. This is what I find fascinating. So the basic principle, as I understand it, and then you can correct me where I'm wrong and tell me that I'm an idiot, which is fine, that you're tapping into the meridians, or in the chakra terms, they would be called nadis,
Nutty. Yeah.
the channels through which our energy flows, which is a difficult thing in you can't cut somebody open and so here are your meridians, here are your
Mhm.
nodes. It just doesn't happen, but they are there nonetheless. And this is why I'm super grateful to Chinese medicine, because it has formalized and brought into the common consciousness the fact that we have energy channels. So when you're talking about chakras and people go, it's a bit airy fairy, you go, no, well, you know that acupuncture works. You can get acupuncture from your doctor, or
Mhm.
they will prescribe you acupuncture. So this must be real. So give me a little bit of history and like, oh God, there's so much to ask. What can you do? Like, okay, where do we begin with
Okay, so
understanding
let's do a comparison, right, between the
that?
nadi and the channels, right?
Oh, yes.
Anytime I see a chart of the nadi, right, it looks like a spider web that's kind of covering the whole body.
Yeah.
When we look at an acupuncture chart, what you have are the 12 main meridians.
Mhm.
And those meridians look more like highways. They're interstate highways, as we would call them in the US, right? They take us all across the country, but they're not the little, towns mapped out. They're not the back roads. They're not that little dirt road that leads to a farm.
Mm.
Those are there. We call those luo collateral channels, but they're not. The chart would be unreadable,
Yeah.
on the wall if we were talking about it in terms that we would talk about nadi. Now,
Yeah.
we do have major centers. Sometimes they'll call those alarm points. And a lot of those line up with roughly where the chakras are.
Mhm.
It's not a one-to-one correlation, and we use them slightly differently. But I would say, and this is something that we're learning more and more about as we find older texts, these channels actually evolved, right? At one point, there wasn't 12, there was 11. And then before that, there was nine. And then those nine didn't even have acupuncture points on them, right?
Uh-huh.
And the idea was we're going to feel along them. And we're actually going to do a technique, moxibustion, which is an herb that we burn on the skin. So moxibustion predates acupuncture because we couldn't work with needles, right? We didn't have metallurgy
Yeah.
at one point, but we could always burn something.
Yes.
Um, and I'm grossly oversimplifying that. There's an amazing book. If somebody really wanted to learn that, I could point them in that direction. It's only good for acupuncturists, though. It'll just confuse everybody else. Um, but within that, these systems, as they evolved, what they were doing was collecting data, right? So acupuncture is really a study of a whole bunch of very subtle signs that we put together in a system to make sense. So somebody might have palpated along somebody's foot when they had a headache and said, oh, you know what? If the headache's over here, this point's better. If the headache's on top of the head, that point's better, right? Because I pressed and someone said, ow.
Mm.
Literally, we have a term ashi, which is Chinese for ouch. That's it. And we say, like, if we're treating pain, that's a great way to look at it. But I really feel like internal conditions, that's kind of how all these things slowly developed.
Mm.
And when I say slowly, over thousands of years, and in a real scientific method, somebody wrote it down, tracked the data, and said, hey, you know what? Out of these 1,000 patients across these doctors, when somebody came in and said X, Y, and Z, we found these points to be tender. And when we treated them, they got better, right? So
Yeah.
this was an evolution.
Yeah.
And it probably started as massage,
Mm.
or they would prick the vessels with a sharpened stick or a sharpened rock, before they could work a metal. And when I say vessels, I mean meridians or even little capillaries.
Yes. Okay.
Now, as that developed, we found the points to lie between where muscle groups crossed or clefts in the bone. There was anatomical markings. And if we run our finger across the surface of the skin lightly, there'll be something that makes your finger stop, right? And it doesn't matter as long as you're on one of those channels, you'll find something.
Yes.
And then if you press in, is that an active point? Oh, the patient might find that sore. They might feel like it feels good when you press it.
Yeah.
The thing that's really interesting about this We have this Cartesian Descartes. I'm going to mention him. This idea of like, I think, therefore I am. And then much later, I believe it was a British philosopher in the 40s that termed the coined the term. Jesus, I'm having a hard time with my idioms. Coined the term ghost in the machine. And he attributed that to Descartes, right? We have the spirit and then we have this physical body.
Yeah.
Chinese medicine hates that. That does not exist. Yeah. So the idea is we have this very etheric thing that we call chi, right? It's energy.
Yeah.
We call it, they'll equate it to prana
Yeah.
in the chakra systems.
Yeah.
But the idea is that is us as much as our physical body is, and we're talking about a relative density, right? So the energy is very subtle, but it gets denser and denser and denser in a very physics way, right? We know that each one of these little atoms, if we split those open, we have infinite energy in there, right? That's how we make atomic bombs and nuclear power plants and things like that. But we're just a bunch of little atoms that kind of got denser and denser.
Yeah.
And along those channels is where this energy is supposed to be flowing. Now, it's always interesting to me because our classic, the one that we all misquote, that's been put together from older sources, and it tells a story of Huangdi, the Yellow Emperor, is having a conversation with his chief physician, Chibo. And he asks about the nature of disease, and he asks all these questions, and he really formalizes and lays out the whole of Chinese medicine. Right now, there were books before that because we have references to them, but warring states and somebody takes over and destroys everything that becomes, and even things like, Confucians didn't like the wishy-washy, new agey feel of the Buddhism and the Taoism, so sometimes they would destroy those books because it's too spiritual. It's not
Yes.
practical,
Yeah.
and that came in and out even with communism. So what survived and what we're putting together is very interesting, where the Yellow Emperor's Internal Classics, which is 3 separate books, the Ling Shu, the Spiritual Pivot, is the one that deals mostly with acupuncture. It's so funny because when we read them, they'll say little lines like, where the chi goes, the blood follows, right? So where the energy flows, the blood goes. And it's like, well, that's kind of what we're doing with acupuncture if we look at it from a Western standpoint. We know that if I put a needle down somebody's arm, your body immediately recognizes that. In Japan, they actually coined the term artificial splinter. So, something just broke the skin. What happens? We send blood to that area. Why? Because that's how we repair the tissue. We fight infection, those kind of things. So when we put these needles in, we're causing, and this is a more modern term, what they call micro trauma, right? No real damage to the tissue. The needle's sterile, but we've got some blood flowing there. And that's how we bring life back, right? And the same thing with even pranayama, right? I'm doing a course online on pranayama right now. So it's fresh in my head. I read a lesson before I hopped on with you. But the idea is that when we get our breath work going, we're circulating more blood, right? We're picking up more oxygen. Hopefully, we're also increasing CO2 for certain purposes. But with all of that, that's exactly what we're doing with acupuncture. Now, the crazy thing is, if we look at the physical functions of acupuncture, what it does to the body, there's this huge cascade of things. The biggest one is regulating the autonomic nervous system. I think that's key with so many different holistic or traditional therapies, right? I know if I get you out of fight or flight and I put you into rest and digest, that's when your body's going to take care of itself.
Yeah, that's when you're going to start to heal. That's when your mental state is going to be in a place being so. Yeah, absolutely.
Hormones regulate, neurotransmitters regulate, more digestion occurs. We're in the repair mode.
Yeah.
So during an acupuncture treatment, we try and play that up as much as possible. There's so many different systems, and getting into the systems would be a fool's errand, because I will say something and somebody will come on and go, that's stupid. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And then I have to show him my CV, and then we get into another argument, which is stupid.
Let's not go there.
But within that, getting you out of that fight or flight mode, triggers all these other effects. And then we have local points or specific points that have specific functions to help tailor that to the individual.
Yeah, I find it absolutely fascinating. So I came to you with lower back pain, for example. Like, you would know exactly where to go to trigger. Now, what I always in my mind, I always had an idea that you were stimulating not only blood flow, because that's, yeah, that's pretty clear, but also stimulating nerve
Hmm.
redirection or regrowth, or I don't know. Is it, I mean, you've talked a lot about the nervous system.
Hmm.
That's different to actual physical nerve
Yeah,
endings.
yeah. So I referred to the autonomic nervous system. You're talking
Yeah.
more central nervous system with the
Mm.
wiring coming off the body.
Mm.
Yes, absolutely. We are not putting needles into the nerves. That is not a fun time. Acupuncture should be relatively painless. You should be relaxed during it.
Okay.
If you hit a nerve, you're not going to do damage, but you're
It's
not going
going
to
to be
like me
hard.
afterwards. Yeah.
It's really painful. I'm
But the
like,
idea is we're into that muscle where that nerve innervates. And that's a little bit more important, because by stimulating that muscle tissue, that impulse, that sensory impulse is going back up that nerve. So it knows that there's something there and
yeah.
that will stimulate that. So yeah, there is a neurological stimulation as well. And this is, we see a lot. I have a couple of active Bell's palsy patients, right? And that's a paralysis of the trigeminal nerve. But we know that like they'll come back and they'll go, oh, I teared a lot more. I was getting twitching or I was feeling itchy. And you're like, oh, good, the nerve is activating. It's not always a pleasant thing when we have some kind of nerve issue when it first starts coming back, but
Yeah.
they're all good signs.
Yeah.
And it's pretty interesting because low back pain is probably bread and butter for most acupuncturists. That's what everyone's seeing.
Yeah.
But we never do the same thing on everybody, right? There might be variations on a theme.
Yeah.
And it comes in when we do that intake, we might be asking you questions about your diet, about your sleep, about your menses, about your
Yeah.
physical activity. And all of that is going to flavor the thing that it, made you get into that, situation. That injury precipitated it, right? Classically, they'll say something like all disease is first rooted in the spirit. Now,
Mhm.
that's a hard leap if you step in front of a bus to say something spiritual went on beforehand.
Yeah.
But is that karma? I don't know. But when you come to get a treatment, we want to take all that into effect too, right?
Yeah.
So it's very often that somebody's coming in for something very physical, and we treat them, and they'll have an emotional release, right? People want to tease those out. These
Yeah.
channels all have emotions. They all associated with. They all have intellectual properties. Like we say, the spleen and stomach is the source of thought, right? So if that's not right, right? What's the main complaint? Brain fog. Oh, okay. Well, let's fix your gut. Oh,
Yeah.
my brain got better. Okay.
Yeah, it's fascinating because, obviously with the chakra system, there's very clear kind of
Hmm.
sort of factors, aspects of our lives that reside within each energy
Hmm.
center. But then, and it's very easy to look at the chakra system and go, okay, so, my relationship with my family, for example, just resides in my root chakra. But of course it doesn't. It resonates through all. It's just a majority stakeholder, if you like, in the root chakra. You've got this spread of energy where there are the main function sits physically within the body.
Hmm.
I'm interested to know, like, that you say that these sort of control centers, is that what you call them, that are a sort of akin to,
Yeah, there's categories of points that seem to tap into things deeper, right? So we start at the tips of the fingers and the toes, and we'll call those well points, right? And then we get a stream or a spring, and then a stream, and then we get a river, and then as we get to the elbows and the knees, we say, oh, that's the sea, right? We're in the sea now. But when we get here, it's a big ocean, right? So yes, there's big centers, right? Like the solar plexus chakra relates to the heart in Chinese medicine. That's the heart influential point. But it doesn't always correspond. First, we only have 5 elements. We
yeah,
do have 12 channels, but the 5 elements, right, all have a color and a season and a flavor and a smell, and the chakras all have that too, but there's 7 of them. Yeah,
yeah,
so it's not a one for one, but there's a lot of overlap. Even this third eye, right? We don't call that a chakra. We don't call that that's not an alarm point, but we use it all the time for calming.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it is, the thing is with the chakra system, it has been very simplified.
Yeah.
People go, oh, I know the seven main chakras, but there are oh gosh, what's the number? Like 180 something. I don't know. There's
Yeah.
like hundreds of minor chakras throughout, the higher heart, the earth star beneath you, the one above you, like in your aura, in your
Mm.
elbows, in your knees. Like you've got chakras, and the nadis, the 72,000 nadis. I don't know how they came to this number of 72,000 because it's very precise, yet
Uh,
also quite random all at the same
The Chinese have this great word "bai," right? And it just means a lot. It's like, how many is it? Bai. It's a lot. It's like 1,000. No, it's 1,000,000. No one knows, right? But bai is a lot.
time.
So we have a meeting point on the top of the head, right? This is the crown chakra, and
Yeah,
we call this bai way, 1,000 meetings, right? And the idea is that all those channels somehow, even if the primary channel doesn't run up there, has a
yeah.
branch, has something that extends to that. And then depending on what time the text was written, we have
Mm.
this either connection to something spiritual up there, or then it all recirculates down around back
Yeah,
into the
which
body.
it kind of either works for me,
Yeah,
frankly,
yeah,
that spiritual. But I love that you say that there's 1,000, what are the 1,000 connections out there?
yeah,
Because at the crown chakra, it's the 1,000 petaled lotus opening
yeah.
into infinity that sits just above the actual physical area of the head. And so within the chakra system and with the sort of the energy system that I work with, we also take into consideration our aura, the fact
Hmm.
have this energy field around us that is undeniable. You walk into a room, you feel somebody's aura, you kind of know
Hmm.
that, you get that sort of gut feeling or whatever, that third eye sense, that instinctual sense about somebody from their energy aura. Does Chinese medicine or does acupuncture sort of take into consideration what is outside the physical? Because yes, whilst our atoms are nice and dense and visible here, they are floating around us as well.
Yes, and it's not overt, right? I think one of the big things that happened, and I think this was a really discredit to Chinese medicine, and it happened by Westerners. It wasn't Asians that did this. They kind of lumped it in with New Age stuff, right?
Yeah,
And we can talk about the chakra system. We can talk about all of that as a very scientific system as well,
absolutely.
right? The problem is when it got lumped in with here, I'll throw LA under the bus, right?
Yeah.
LA on the West Coast here, where it's like,
A
oh
lot of
God, you're
listeners in
doing
California.
this. What?
So I've got a lot of listeners in California.
Yeah,
Just
yeah. So let's piss them all off. That's okay. My social media manager is over there. Actually, she acts as my agent too most of the time. So she'll love this. But there's like, there wasn't substance to it. Oh God, I'm doing this because I'm so spiritual, right? And real spiritual people, like, I used to do all these qigong classes, and we had like people coming in from China, and I've trained with a lot of really skilled qigong practitioners, right? And there's always some woman in the back of the room doing these giant motions, and I'm like, no, he was like this. I mean, it was like a 2-inch inhale exhale. Oh my God, I'm feeling the energy. I'm like, your head doesn't even look like it's connected to your shoulders. Yeah, yeah, but that was kind of what was put on, I think, a lot of Asian practices,
yeah,
including Ayurveda,
yeah,
um, because they couldn't get the subtlety of it, right?
yeah,
If we look at Western medicine as a whole, what did they do? No, 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 no. You got emotional shit. It's over here. All right,
yeah, yeah.
you go see the shrinks.
This
You
bit
got,
over there,
oh,
this bit.
your teeth. No, your teeth. No, that belongs to the dentist. Oh, you're pregnant. Oh, we got a whole ward for you. Wait a minute. Part. That's actually a normal, healthy function. Oh yeah, no, no, no. We treat it. we treat. Well, they still have midwives in most of the civil world, except for the U.S. Right? But we have them. You just can't get access to them. Sorry, I'm going to
No,
destroy
go for it.
the U.S. medical system too while we're at it. But
Oh yeah,
within that, right, like the idea that we're not the sum, or we're not this complicated, synergistic, psycho-emotional, spiritual, physical being, that was never the thing in Asia. It came here, and because there was discussion of emotions, there was discussions of spirituality, it got jammed into like this new agey space. And I'm
yeah,
not saying there's not value in that new agey space, But what I'm saying
Absolutely.
is it really hurt the genuine benefits, right? Now I have a couple of people that are getting their master's degrees in yoga therapy, right? And the hard science that's behind that and the data that they collected, right?
The
And very much in the same way that they do psychology, right? We can't say because there isn't a thing to necessarily hang a number on. With Chinese medicine, we have over 30,000 studies now, peer
Mm.
reviewed studies. And the bulk majority of them started to disprove, let's get rid of this nonsense. Oh crap, what they're saying is real.
It works.
Now, how is this happening became the next question, right?
Yeah.
So it informed a lot of things,
Mm.
but when we see these studies done, we're like, oh, I'd never do it on every patient. They like who came up with these points? You know, that's what we all read, and we're like, oh, the benefits are great, but the study looks like crap for us because you never just do the same thing on everybody. But that's how we do double-blind, placebo-controlled studies in the US.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, fitting these kind of therapies into the Western standard sort of mold, it just doesn't work because that mold does
Yeah,
not allow for the fact that, drum roll please, we're all slightly different.
yeah, yeah. Now,
That we have
yeah,
different everythings. Yes, we all have a heart and lungs and what have you, but emotionally, experientially, you know, everything that we've gone through in our lives creates a completely unique person. And that's spectacular. It's wonderful. But the modern medicine goes, oh, you can just have the same pills as that guy over there. And, they may weigh, twice as much as you, but we're going to still get, it gives
same dose. Yeah, yeah.
but also the historical stuff, the emotional stuff, the trauma that you hold in your bodies, like
Mhm.
all of these things that feed into making every case of whatever disease there is, or discomfort, unique to that
Yeah.
person. So that's why the Chinese herbal medicine and acupuncture is so fantastic. And which
Mhm.
is why also, the chakra system, in my view, works for everybody because it can be, yes, you need to learn about it, but then you can apply it in such a unique and individualized way to everybody. Because no two persons' energy is going to be the
No.
same. Twins, because they live in different spaces. So let's move on to exploring Chinese herbal medicine, because
Yeah.
this is something, again, that you can find pretty much on every high street in this country. There's Chinese herbal medicines. But again, they've got this kind of slight reputation of like, oh, well, it's just some stinky herbs and I'm not sure what it's doing for me, but I'll give it a go.
Yeah, yeah.
Slightly
Yeah.
ridiculous.
I
It feels like it's a
it
last
feels
resort for a lot of people.
and unfortunately, when we're practicing high level East Asian medicine as a whole, you're doing it on that preventative side, right? We want to see
Sure.
things, before the disease starts to manifest. And you're absolutely right. A lot of times people turn to alternative therapies as a last ditch effort, right? I got nothing. They're giving me a certain amount of time left in body, and
Sure.
I'm going to swing at the fences.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes we pull out miracles, but if people realize that the first moment they started to feel off, if that's when they went for practices like Chinese herbal medicine, if that's when they went for acupuncture, if that's when they got massages, cupping, these kind of things,
Mm.
they could sidestep all of that. But how do you sell that? Like, I hate to say that it's not marketable, right? Well, it's
Really, it's
this
hard.
isn't even bothering me enough to take care of.
Yeah.
But no, no, no. Now it's hanging off you, and you can't walk. But now I'll do something. Yeah,
Okay, so in China,
yeah,
where presumably herbal medicine is absolutely the mainstream thing,
yeah,
is it, do they how do they integrate that into their society? So like,
yeah.
as a child, as a teenager, as a young woman, whatever, like, are you going to see your Chinese herbalist just when you feel fine and you're just like, okay, I'm just here for my kind
Some
of my
some
checkup?
people do. Some people do. I
Is
would
that
say that there's a couple of different things, especially when we deal with China as opposed to Asia, the rest of Asia, including Japan and Korea. In
hmm,
China, there isn't this Western medicine versus traditional medicine, right? So if you go to a hospital, you get triaged. And when you're triaged, they decide, oh, you need acupuncture and surgery and herbs and physical therapy. And it's not this is what you need. Now, the
Yeah.
other thing is culturally, there is a basis that certain Chinese herbal formulas, certain home modalities, right? So I wrote a book on cupping for home use because, like, any Asian grocery store you walk into and you go down the health section, you can get a cupping set that isn't a fire cupping set, pumps, silicone, all these different ways to apply the cups safely and effectively. And it's just part of the culture, right? Even the topical liniments that we use, it always cracks me up when I see clinicians using home use devices. And it's not that it's bad, it's just that no one knows about it. So you're using something that, like,
That anybody could use.
anybody in Asia would go and just pick up off the shelf. And the same thing for certain herbal formulas, right? Especially the ones that are more tonifying, the ones that are not going to cause damage. There are very toxic herbs in China. There are very toxic herbs that I can get. Now, we use those very judiciously, very, monitored, right? It's not something, here's 3 months worth of this, just keep taking it. Hey, I'm going to give you 2 doses and I want
Yeah.
you to call me after you take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, even to the point where we uh we just recently I got quoted on something which is a modern adaptation. Now, the Lancet, this big Western medical journal, said, "Holy shit, this helps with heart attacks." And I apologize for cursing. That's who I
Oh,
am.
wow.
But I got interviewed because they said, "Wait, there's a Chinese herbal formula that can help people who have had heart attacks." Yes, absolutely. Well,
Mm.
what is in it? And I'm like, nothing safe. This is not candy. Like, that was the big takeaway. Why? You have venomous insects and multiple, three.
Okay.
You have a whole bunch of things that act as MAO inhibitors, things that actually regulate heartbeats and things like that. So it's not candy. So people think that, like, oh, it's an herb, it's safe. I used to work for this chain of wellness centers, and the medical director would say, "Oh, we're bringing in the velvet from the deer antlers, right?" And he's like, "Oh, this is an adaptogen, it boosts testosterone production." And I go, "Yeah, it's a Chinese herb." And he goes, "It's not an herb, it's an animal product." And I go, "Oh, when I say Chinese herbal medicine, if it goes in the pot, it's an herb."
Yes.
Right? So bees nests. There are a whole bunch of other stuff. I gave a lecture to our military medical system here, and it was during Halloween. And I said, "I'm just gonna. Is it cool if I just do gross stuff that you guys are doing today, and you call it something else, and then you pretend like it didn't have a Chinese precursor?" And we talked about fecal transplants. We talked about using animal feces in herbal formulas and things like that, and these modern correlations, maggot therapy, these things that we thought were like, oh, these are ancient, they're gross, no one needs them.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, no, the Chinese were using them, they were documenting them to the point where now fecal transplants are a real medical thing. Somebody who has C. diff or somebody that can't fix their gut health, this is what they're using. And the study that I pulled up actually referenced a Chinese physician in 300 AD that said, "Here's what this is."
Wow.
And a Western journal actually quoted the classical Chinese physician that came up with it. So I also find it funny because I really like this, and I promise I'll bring this back.
Right.
I'm not going to run away with this, but there's a show called Ancient Aliens, right? And it is just like everything that anybody ever did in ancient times. It must have been aliens. Why? We weren't that smart. And it's like, no, you idiots. We've had this brain since we, came out of the caves, fell out of the trees, whatever we did to
Yeah.
separate ourselves from other primates. And we sat around and we observed things and we wrote stuff down and we thought about things much more than we do now.
Yeah.
And
And we
because of
used,
that, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, and we used what we had available.
Yeah.
We trusted that this Mother Earth that we live on was going to provide us with everything we need, and it still does. But we get scared about the idea of using, I don't know, some kind of, God forbid, some scary mushroom or herb that
Mhm.
we don't understand. But no, we'll take a white pill that's been made in a factory that's got all sorts of synthetic stuff and go, oh, yes, gobble that down.
And you won't question the person in the white lab coat giving it to you. But if
Exactly.
I go to do something, do you have any proof that works? Well,
Yeah.
actually, I do, but maybe you should have the same conversation with your physician,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
You know,
exactly. And they just give you some sort of dry paper that goes, yeah, this
yeah.
should fix you, but you might feel nauseous, sick, dizzy, all of the other side effects. And that's one thing that I have personally have a real issue with modern medicine is that, like, yeah, it does this thing, but it also does all of this other hideous
Yeah.
thing to you. Whereas I feel with Chinese medicine, like if I came to you with an issue, you would tailor there's no like, oh, you just need three number sixes and two number
Well,
eights, like standard stuff. You would
there
take,
are standard formulas that can be tailored when they need to be, you know.
yeah,
So
exactly.
it's not always this is a one size fits all.
No,
Sometimes the formula isn't even like, we'll say, oh, this formula is for sleep, and you're coming in and you don't have a sleep issue, but no, this is the right formula for you,
yeah, okay.
right?
So just because I'm aware of time and so on, and I want to ask, oh God, I had a question in my head and it's completely disappeared. Okay, so here's something. What can you do for menopause? Okay,
So
menopause brain. That's
this
something that we have.
is women's health has been one of the largest areas that Chinese medicine wrote about. And it wasn't, oh, we love women, or it wasn't a real feminist movement. It was more of a functionality of like, we need a bunch of kids to work a farm, or the emperor needs heirs. So there is a huge amount written about this, and we're even using single herbs from Chinese medicine in dangui is one that we hear a lot as a single herb. Angelicus, I believe, is what we call it in Latin. But so we have plenty of Chinese herbal formulas for menopausal, perimenopausal type symptoms.
Hmm.
We do a lot of acupuncture for it, and really, because all of and I'm going to make this blanket statement, and I try not to a lot because somebody will always say, no, that's not true for this case.
Yeah.
Um, but East Asian medicine as a whole is a lifestyle medicine. That
Mm.
means it is meant to meet the person where they're at and take them through that level and then to the next phase in their
I mean,
life.
it's not as if perimenopause is unnatural. It's like a
No.
completely natural thing. It's just like completely normal thing that we all go through, or women, go through. So, yeah, treating it normally. My question came back to me. So
Okay.
someone's listening to this and they're thinking, well, I feel fine. I don't have any big health issues. I don't have any problems, but I hear what Tom is saying, and this is like a preventative thing. This is just like
Mhm.
a lifestyle thing. So where does somebody begin with this journey through with Chinese herbal medicine or acupuncture, all of these things?
So in the US, we would say, find a licensed acupuncturist. Sometimes they use the term registered, but you want to make sure that whatever governing body that
Yeah.
you're you're looking at, that person is trained and certified by that board.
Mm.
Within that, people sometimes go for just well care. I have a lot of patients that have been seeing me. They might have come in for a specific condition. When that condition improved, now they're coming to me, once a month, once a quarter,
Yeah.
maybe seasonally. Hey, I know I get allergies in the spring. I'm going to start coming in as the weather starts warming up. Acupuncture, one of my favorite expressions from that book I keep referencing, is acupuncture is an expression of humanity,
Mm.
right? So it has to fit that individual's humanity, right? And that's different, right? And as we age, as we go through things, somebody's going to drop something, somebody's going to get hurt, somebody's going to have a season where they're just getting sick all the time.
Yeah.
And that's normal, right? That's part of being a human. That's the deal. So when those things come up, that's when you seek out treatment more frequently. When
Yeah.
you're feeling good, staying that way might look different to everybody.
Yeah.
If your diet's on point, if you're spending a lot of time outside, if you're managing your stress levels, great. If you're a Fortune 500 CEO, you're probably going to want to come in frequently. I mean, it's the same. What's the
Yeah.
expression? If you can meditate 20 minutes a day, if you don't have the time, meditate an hour.
Hmm.
And it's that same kind of thing where it's like,
Yeah.
if you're running and burning the candle at both ends, you're going to need more treatment to keep up and stay doing that. Now, that's not sustainable. It's not something we should strive for. Hustle culture will kill us all. But if you need to go because you're going hard for a specific goal, or I just got to get through this. Yes, services like acupuncture, cupping, massage, Chinese herbal medicine can help you get through all that.
I mean, it speaks to me when you say that, and I think of, maybe like someone who's a mother who has, young kids, and we all
Hmm.
know how incredibly draining that is, especially if you're holding down a job as well and you're looking after the home. Like looking after yourself, that self-care, that self-love portion of our energetic world, which is so important,
Hmm.
is something that often gets, we end up at the bottom of the priority list ourselves. And so it sounds to me like this is something that is really kind of like a very positive, impactful thing that you could do for yourself in terms of just that low level self-care. Just
Hmm.
like, yeah, I'm just going to go and see the Chinese therapist, the herbal, and just keep my energy levels up, like things that are coming up. I feel like it really, and I was about to say complimentary, but I realized that then bolts it straight back into the sort of,
All the adjectives they
it's
use are not completely accurate, right? Yes, there is a complementary. Yes, if you need surgery, get surgery. If there's a medicine that you need, take the medicine. I do not want somebody to think that they're going to come see me and their type 1 diabetes is going to go
yeah.
away. No,
No,
I'm
but in
sorry.
terms
You
of
were born with that,
maintaining your
Yes.
health of your body
Yes.
and the clarity of mind and going in the direction you want to go in, in life, whether that's, like fierce abundance and lots of, work and excitement and travel and so on.
Hmm.
Body needs support whilst you do that. Or
Absolutely.
if you want to become, if self-development is your goal, if you want to grow as a person, understand more, this is also going to be something that will support you in that. I find it fascinating, and you've really inspired me. So, Tom, I realized that had you for quite a long time. So I'm
Oh,
going
you're
to give
fine.
approximately 2 minutes. No, not really. I want you to just tell me how you got into it. How did you find
I,
this world?
I think it was when I look back, it was a disillusionment of the current medical system. My grandfather was a pharmacist, and I remember him counting out pills. We do not, we have private insurance here, and if you don't have private insurance, you pay for your drugs out of pocket.
Yeah,
And the guy he was counting these pills out for was a migrant worker. He hopped on the back of a van every day, and at the end of the day, somebody handed him cash.
yeah.
He needed to take 3 pills a day for the rest of his life, and this is back in the early '90s. And my grandfather said, "Look, these pills are $5 a piece. This guy's going to be on this the rest of his life. He's got a family. He's working his ass off." He didn't say ass. He didn't curse.
Wouldn't it? Yeah.
But he basically said, there's got to be a better way, and I'm hoping you find it.
Yeah.
Now, we haven't cracked the code where I can give it away for free yet. But I think an intervention that aims at taking care of the body rather than just covering up a symptom or put you as a customer for the rest of your life
Mm,
is going to be better in the long run for people.
yeah.
I also just had so many weird well, that wasn't a pleasant experience with Western physicians. I was a pre-med major. I was set to go to med school. And a couple of Chinese philosophy courses and a postcard in the mail during my junior year Christmas break for an acupuncture school immediately pulled me right off that ride. I was enrolled in that school 2 weeks after I went to that open house.
Amazing. That's fantastic. Tom, you've been so interesting, and I feel like we've literally scratched the surface. And I would love to, revisit. I feel like we could go deep into a specific thing.
Yeah, sure. Whenever. I'm more than happy to come back
I've,
on. I had a great
it's,
time.
yeah, it's been really fun chatting with you, and I'm so grateful for your wisdom because I feel educated, so I hope everybody else does too.
Oh, thank
So,
you.
yeah, well, thank you very much for coming on. Oh, tell people how they can get hold of you.
Yeah, so the easiest way, I always give my clinic's webpage because it has information on my books, on my lecturing, all that stuff. CharmCityIntegrative.com. So Charm City is Baltimore's nice nickname.
Okay.
And then integrative is kind of what we do. We try to put it all together. We're not us or them. We want people to be able to use whatever therapies they need to.
Okay, brilliant. I'm going to make it Charm City Integrative. Interesting. Beautiful. Thank you. And I don't suppose can you treat people, and obviously not acupuncture, clearly, on Zoom or not? Yeah.
So I tried during COVID, and I was giving recommendations, acupressure. So I lean more into the physical acupuncture, moxibustion, cupping, gua sha, those services.
Mm,
I do herbal medicine, but that's kind of a secondary thing for me.
right.
Um, and the way rules are, doing things across state line or doing things in different countries,
Yeah.
it gets people in trouble. So I do things for people in my state via Zoom or something like that if they need to. But in most cases, I suggest, even if it's a consultation that we do over Zoom, chances are I'm going to refer you to somebody that's local.
He's local, yeah. No, well, I mean, lucky all those people who live in Baltimore because I would love to come and have a cupping or an
Well,
acupuncture
if you
session.
if you ever find yourself in Baltimore, look me up.
Well, you never know. I feel like I've made so many contacts and friends in America that I may be over quite soon. I'm thinking like 2026 is my aim to do a retreat over there, and then I'll do
Oh,
a full
fun.
tour, and come visit all the lovely people that I've met.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Hopefully I think 2026 might be the year I buy a building and have a permanent home for my clinic. So,
Oh, wow. Amazing.
yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll make a stop by. Thank you so much,
All right.
Tom. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for having me.
All right.